there are a lot of extra things to talk about in regards to Bravely Default, so we may be here for a while. If you're only interested in one particular topic, then there are timecodes in the description for your convenience. First off, we're going to cover some of the miscellaneous things you get for completing the game, as well as the Nemesis and other extra bosses. So first off, for beating the game, you get New Game Plus. It's very robust in this game. When you choose New Game Plus, you can individually choose what exactly you want to carry over, from your character's names if you renamed them, your money, your Nemesis progress, or even your jobs and job levels. If you want to start an essentially brand new game, but with all the jobs available from the very start, you can totally do that. Seriously has to be one of the best implementations of New Game Plus out there. Another bonus for beating the game, you'll unlock a special cutscene, which you can also unlock ahead of time by entering the Konami code on the selection screen. It's a teaser for Bravely Second, and it's pretty sweet.
Looks like the cerebral dysrhythmia has evened out.
How's his pulse? A bit low, but holding.
And the status of the expunction system?
Standing by. No issues to speak of.
Good.
Poor wretch. Asleep ever since. Some end for a hero who helped save the world.
Switch into auxiliary power now! Transfer complete! Power will return to each circuit in order.
Showtime!
Expunge!
No threat. You okay? Looks like it. Splendid. No brave points. Guess there's nothing more. Here goes. 3 seconds! Chamomile means energy and university in the language of flowers. You'll see I can pull through a pinch anytime. So much for going home. Give me a second. Bonjour, Tiz. I'm Magnolia. Magnolia Arch. Ballbuster. Relax. No need to be suspicious of me. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I envy you, Tiz. Because you've got the kind of good luck I'll never enjoy. You get to live in the same era as me, you lucky dog, you. Okay, let's get going. To where? To someplace nice.
leaves a lot of questions as to Tiz's fate, where the other party members are, who this Magnolia character is, and confirms that balls will play an important part in Bravely Second story. It's awesome, and a great bonus for finishing the game. Now let's talk about the Nerende bosses, available only in the games for the sequel version, which I'll be talking about in a bit more detail later, but if you're playing the Western version, that's basically what you're playing. You don't have to worry about it. Again, we'll talk about it more later. They're spread through Street Pass and by updating your data, with some officially spread by Square Enix, and I'll be fighting all of the unique ones in separate videos. The playlist for Nemesis battles will be linked in the description or via a card on screen. Now, what do I mean when I say unique ones? Well, specifically, I mean these 9 bosses: Asmodeus, Beelzebub, Belphegor, Leviathan, Lucifer, Mammon, Satan, Ball 1 Turtle Dove, and Ball 4 Goldie. All of these are unique boss fights with their own strategies that you won't see anywhere else in the game. There's also the potential to run into minus or plus versions of these bosses, which are weaker and stronger versions of the bosses respectively. But there are some that aren't exactly like this, such as this one, Be Mine White Fox. This is just another refight with Holly and Barris, but they're powered up a little bit, such as Holly now using Holy and Kirata. Still, it's largely the same fight as the old one, just harder. Other similar nemesis include Early Spring Teddy, a refight with the Automaton initially fought at Grap Keep, but they now use overclocking to raise their aim and speed. New Year Limited Tako Izumi, a fight with Kami Izumi where he not only has his countering skills, but also a 100% crit chance, so his counters will almost assuredly kill. He can also summon Susanoo, non-elemental magic, and give himself BP with a large BP drink. He's the only fight in the entire series, as far as I know, that has essentially abilities from 3 jobs. It's a very, very tough refight. There's also Still No Vacation, which is Profiteer and Kint again, with Profiteer now giving Kint BP and Kint using Death Sword magic. Tax on the Cupid, essentially a lower version of Still No Vacation, where Kint will now depart when Profiteer takes enough damage, as far as I can tell. Working Overtime, fighting the Jackal and Kint again, with Jackal now using Godspeed Strike and Kint using Sleep Sword magic. Kint will also depart in this fight when Jackal takes enough damage. Lucky Jade and Polywog Pig, encountered in the same fight. The Lucky Jade is essentially the Dryad enemy, and Polywog's just being chompers. These guys are incredibly weak, and pretty much any attack will kill them in one hit. The advantage is that the battle gives a decent amount of Pig upon completion, so you can take advantage of this if you get it early on. Early Bird Special is just a Sandworm enemy, it seems. It doesn't fight differently or seem much stronger, but you get 2014 Pig for defeating it, so that's pretty good. Apparently its stats reference the date September 17th, 2014, but no one knows the significance of this reference, if it's even intentional, so I don't know. And Tricker Eater is similar to Early Bird Special, where it's just a Soil Eater that seems to be the exact same and gives you 2015 Pig. Its stats reference March 3rd, 2015, but again, no one knows if this really means anything. I'll try and fight these ones if and or when I gain access to them, but since some are pretty rare and I haven't seen most of them at all, I really can't guarantee anything. And while I am pure and would never do this, I know of no way through hacking or homebrewing to access these without street passing. Again, not that I would ever do that. Upon defeat, the Nemesis can drop bun items, which can be used to increase the stats of your characters, with weaker Nemesis dropping single stat buns and stronger ones dropping unearthly buns, allowing you to raise every stat at once. With enough grinding, you can essentially get your characters to become gods with max stats. And of course, the music. So the balls play a song called Ibitsu Nara Shinen Sono na Hamau, which according to Google Translate means, sorry, but that is not it. Alright then, sure, okay. Oh, another suggestion is, Miss Underable thought that name is okay. Cool, I'm glad we have their approval. Thank you, Miss Underable. Anyway, the song's been playing in the background and it's absolutely fantastic. Here's a sample of it alone. All the unique Nemesis bosses are taken from Final Fantasy The Four Heroes of Light, the spiritual predecessor to Bravely Default. I do own it, and I've played a decent chunk of it, and it's not really my thing. It's okay and all, but fights are more frustrating than fun, bosses especially. In my whole playtime, my party was fully together only once, at the very beginning. After that, they separated and never came back together, at least not from like 10 minutes where 2 or 3 of them might join up again. The game felt very grindy and boring, and while it's possible I may have just been garbage at it, it's difficult to recommend, but I wanted to mention it anyway, especially since the music that plays during the Nemesis fights in Bravely Default is a remix of that game's standard battle theme, Battle with Demons. The remix is nice, especially since Four Heroes of Light went for this weird 8-bit style for its soundtrack that wasn't fully 8-bit, but also really didn't fit the aesthetic of the game. It was weird. Last extra boss to talk about, found in the extra dungeon accessible in the very last chapter, Dimensions Hasp. At the very bottom floor, past this chest, you can just inexplicably walk through this wall and find the adventurer and his fox friend, and they'll ask to fight you. This boss is insanely difficult. You really have to be prepared if you're going to fight this guy. I won't go into too much detail here, as I will be having a separate video of my struggle with him, again linked in the description or with the card on screen right now, but just know that you might have a bit of a bad time against this guy. Bravely Default took quite a while to be localized to the West, but that's for a good reason, it seems, and not just Square Enix's incompetence. There was an update to the game in the works shortly after its successful release in Japan that would improve some aspects of the game, as well as add in some quality of life improvements that would be featured in the sequel, Bravely Second. These include, from the Final Fantasy Wiki, the auto battle system, the ability to speed up battle animations, which without this, Summoner must have been basically the worst thing ever to use, because without speeding it up, you have to view those long summon animations each and every time you use a summon. Though I'm not sure if this was the case in the original release, I sincerely hope not, because that sounds dreadful. The Bravely Second mechanic was added, the ability to change encounter rates, improved town graphics, an improved UI that shows character stats on the bottom screen, which I don't really understand how that wasn't in the full game in the first place, but whatever, I guess. An improved battle UI that shows what commands you input for that turn, an English language option, 2 more save slots, the event viewer in Dee's journal, and revisions in the game involving the asterisk bearers, which I don't know what that means, maybe the story behind them or something, I have no idea. And I'm sure there's more changes, but those are the big ones I could find at least. This, for the sequel version of the game, is the one we got right off the bat. Japanese players had to either rebuy the game or pay to have their game updated with all these features. On the topic of difference between versions, I suppose we might as well talk about the changes the game saw when it was brought over to North America. In other words, how it was censored. As is typical for JRPGs, characters were aged up to be at least 18 years old. A number of outfits were changed as well for the Western release, or cut altogether. First off, some costumes were obtained by buying extra material for Bravely Default, such as art books or soundtracks. These are the Bravo Bunny for Anyas, the Dimensional Officer for Tiz, the Military Cadetin for Adia, and the Wakoku Warrior for Ringabel. None of these are available in the Western release, unfortunately, though they can be seen if you summon a Japanese player who has these equipped. As for changes, 2 outfits were censored. Adia's Bravo Bikini has a less revealing top and bottom, and the outfit for Anyas as a vampire in Japan was essentially a bunch of belts, and so much of Anyas' skin was revealed. In the West, they added more belts to cover more skin. On the topic of outfits, I should mention the Vestal Garb. This is an outfit for Anyas that can be obtained by completing the game's fake ending, accessible by attempting to break a crystal. It's a bit hefty to include in this video, but I will have a separate video of this up, and a link to that will be in the description below, or on the card on screen right now. Bravely Default spawned a number of games from its success, and not just its direct sequel, Bravely Second Endlayer, though that is the only other game that is truly relevant to the series. Anything else, as far as I can tell, is completely extra and non-canon. At least I sure hope they are, because I can either not play them at all, or cannot understand them, as the 3 games I'm going to talk about were only officially released in Japan. The first is a browser game, Bravely Default's Praying Bridge, and yes, that name is really goddamn stupid, and I don't know what it means, but that's its name, so we just have to accept it and move on. Anyway, as I mentioned, this is a browser game only released in Japan. I'd love to play it myself, but unfortunately, the only way to do so, as far as I know, is through a Japanese Yahoo account, which I can't make because you need to enter a Japanese CAPTCHA, and I have no clue how I'd go about doing that, so we're just stuck with information from the Final Fantasy Wiki. First off, the story. The game is set in Luxendarc 200 years after Bravely Default's, where in this world, when the Holy Pillar appeared, it evaporated the Southern Ocean, and the temples exploded and blocked out the sun, causing the people to abandon the land. Over time, the land began to separate from the earth and disintegrating into the sky, until a new crystal orthodoxy emerged and on a floating piece of land, buried a crystal shard that caused the land to stop rising. This became Crystallica, and it moved people here to save them from the crumbling Luxendarc below. 4 other pieces of floating land were given the same treatment, and became nations of their own: Ignis, Odina, Windian, and Peterania, fire, water, wind, and earth, respectively. Somehow, Adia ended up being transported to this future while searching for missing Anyas, and she decided to take up the Oblige name while searching for her in this future, becoming the Vestal of Wind in Windian. A big tie into Bravely Default is Lilia de Rosa Oblige, the Earth Vestal in Peterania, and likely the creation of Victor, after he was given a sample of hair from de Rosso. De Rosso did ask Victor to name any life that came from it after Lilia, his mother, after all. Other than that though, the story of this game, as far as I know, has nothing at all to do with Bravely Default and is completely non-canon. In terms of gameplay, you can actually combine jobs together to create new ones, such as combining Knight and Black Mage to get the Spell Fencer. That sounds like a really interesting mechanic and kind of ties into my idea of some jobs simply being updates to others that I stated in the main game. It's not exactly the same, of course, but regardless, it's a mechanic I find really interesting. Since there are jobs though, there is of course a battle system, which from everything I've read about the game, seems to be Bravely Default's battle system, but without the Brave and Default that make it really unique. There are also items and points gained from battle, or the available side quests, that can be used in towns to get new armor and weapons, improve the stores themselves, or get new jobs. It is a free-to-play game after all, so of course there has to be some form of microtransactions. In this, it's that the members of your party can only partake in so many battles before they tire out and have to rest for a while, though you can build a few different parties to sort of remedy this, and of course with real-world money, you can buy an item to cure everyone of their fatigue. It does sound like an interesting game, and I definitely like to play it one day, but as of right now, I've yet to find a way to solve a Japanese CAPTCHA, which is why we've had to rely on images to visualize what I'm talking about. The next 2 games I'm not going to talk about too much because it includes characters and spoilers for Bravely Second, or at least I would assume they include spoilers. I mean, I don't really know because the game's all in Japanese, but these are the mobile games Bravely Archive D's Report and Bravely Default's Fairies Effect. Bravely Archive D's Report is unfortunately no longer playable, as its servers closed in October of 2017, so I'm unable to capture footage for it, but let's at least talk about what it was when it could still be played. Your character, a librarian aiming to get memories from crystals and record what's in them, goes through dungeons to find these with the help of characters from Bravely Default and Second. Battles were done by essentially swiping in directions to perform different attacks or defend, and of course there were many jobs to choose from. I mean, it's a Bravely game, so you could kind of expect that. It had a system where you could buy crystals, get new characters, or hold more characters, I guess something similar to Fire Emblem Heroes. Other than that, I don't think there's that much to talk about. I played it very briefly when it was still up, and frankly couldn't understand what was happening, but I mean, it was kind of fun, I guess, but I really wish these games were released in English at all. Oh, and thank you to KongBakPower.com for the images of Bravely Archive D's report. Now, Bravely Default Fairies Effect, a game that takes place 8,000 years after Bravely Default and 2nd, yet somehow characters from both games are still alive, I think? Or maybe, since it's a gacha game, you just summon them from different times or something. That makes a little bit more sense. Anyway, the story is apparent that the crystals are growing weaker, and the world's going to break, and you, through this customizable avatar character, has gotta help. Also, your friend is shot in the opening. I don't know why, but hey, they're dead. And also, we find a fairy to tag along with, because a fairy is always a good sign in a Bravely game. In terms of gameplay, battles take place on a sort of grid-based field where characters can either be in the front, middle, or back, which I would assume affects how much damage they give or take depending on the position. You automatically attack on a timer and gain BP from defeating enemies. This BP can be used to gain special attacks to deal a ton of damage. Jobs can be gained from completing certain missions, and apparently random people can join you on these missions, so shout out to these random dudes for their help, I guess. Jobs can be improved from this asterisk board thing, which seems like exactly what I kinda wish some jobs were like in the actual game. Honestly though, past that, there isn't much I can tell you about this game. I mean, there's a gacha weapon crafting system, so you can get random weapon crystals or something, whatever's going on here. And there's all these cute emotions for your character to act out and stamps you can post in the chat. That's cool. But other than that, I've got nothing. It actually seems really fun, and I might actually get into it if I could understand any of it. Oh, and I should mention that all the music in these games is taken straight from Bravely Default and 2nd. No original songs here, or even remixes. There are a few books worth mentioning when talking about Bravely Default, those being the Artbook, the 2-volume Pocketbook of R series, and the Manga. The Artbook is just that, an art book. There honestly isn't all that much to talk about here, besides that the art is very good, it's great to see some of the concepts, and that it's cool includes art from Bravely Default's Praying Brage. It was included in the special edition of the game, but alone, this thing isn't really all that expensive, so if you have the money, I'd say go for it, if you like to collect these sort of things in the first place, of course. The Pocketbook of R series is pretty interesting, though we are only going to be talking about the first volume here. There is a second, but it doesn't have much to do with Bravely Default, so we're omitting that for now. Of course, this was only released in Japan, so all the text is in Japanese, so I can't read that. Luckily, there is currently a translation in the works for this by Doki Doki Master, or Ellen, on Tumblr. Each page is translated by commission for $5, and she does fantastic work, either translating things directly that deserve that treatment, or simply summarizing things that may not really require a full translation. Essentially, the journal details Ringabel's journey after the events of Bravely Default, where he ends up in another version of Luxendarc with the crystals darkened once again. He meets up with Tiz, Anius, Idia, and Eri once more, as they aim to reawaken the crystals. Of course, Ringabel is incredibly confused as to how Eri can be alive, and if this means that Ouroboros is alive again as well. This Eri has an infinity symbol on her wings, opposed to a number, implying that no matter how long Eri links versions of Luxendarc together, nothing will come of it, as Ouroboros has already been defeated. But this is just that, an implication, nothing is stated outright. Ultimately, Ringabel decides to see just how things will play out, as even despite the knowledge he has from his adventure before, he's unsure just what all of this means. His main goal throughout all of this is to prevent any and all deaths that happened in the Fifth World, often by doing some really, really weird things like stripping down naked in front of Jackal. Honestly, I have no clue what he was thinking. But to be fair, it worked, so I guess I can't argue. Near the end, before the Sacred Flower Festival in Florum, he gives some development on why he didn't confront Eri about her being evil sooner, as he did really consider her a friend. He didn't want to believe that it was all a lie, and was only forced to do so when she finally betrayed the party. As he asks Eri about Ouroboros, the Echelot crashes into Florum. Holly and Barris had been attacked by an assassin for earlier betraying the duchy after being convinced by Ringabel. This assassin is Alternus Dim, and that's where that ends. Quite the cliffhanger. Translation further into the second volume hasn't begun, so I have no idea what happens from there, but I'd be super interested to find out. According to this post on Reddit from UA2, he ultimately convinces Eri to turn from evil, preventing the Holy Pillar from coming, and destroying the Norende of the next world. He eventually returns to the Fifth World, just before Tiz collapses, releasing the Celestial within him. Sadly, I don't really have the money to commission many page translations to get more detail on this, let alone a full journal, but I'd say $5 is a fair price per page, so if you're as interested as I am and have some money to spare, consider sending it their way. I, at least, would very much appreciate it. I'll leave a link to the Google Doc where you can read the work they have done, as well as a link to their Tumblr where you can commission translations in the description below. On the topic of Ringbell and Dee's journal, or R's journal or whatever, there was also an exact replica of Dee's journal released only in Japan through Square Enix's website. I would absolutely love to get this, but I cannot find it anywhere online for purchase. It's no longer available through Square Enix's store, and I have not been able to find it on eBay or any other retailer site. As far as I can tell, its pages were completely blank. I suppose it was supposed to be an actual notebook, but that honestly makes it less enticing for me. It'd still be really cool to have regardless. Now for the manga. The differences between it and the game are minor through the game's prologue and first chapter. The way the party comes together and encounters with the asterisk bearers are slightly different, mainly to make it flow better as a manga, but it's nothing major. Still a great read though. The game's second chapter and beyond is where some changes start to appear in the manga. The party still encounters the Blood Rose Legion in Florem and work to find Olivia, but the way everything works out differs pretty significantly. Specifically, Olivia lives! Yeah, the party finds out where she is, they're followed by Victor and Victoria as normal, but instead of hitting Olivia with lethal magic, as happens in the game, Victoria hits Agnes with it and kills her. That is, until Olivia manages to magically get a phoenix down. I don't really know from who or where, God, maybe, the player, I don't know. Either way, both Olivia and Agnes live, and they defeat Victor and Victoria right then and there, and they both proceed to go and awaken the Crystal of Water. Oh, and also, none of the Blood Rose Legion actually die, but De Rosa is arrested in the manga. Turns out he manipulated Artemia and Mephilia with his special perfume stuff, and his actions in Florem weren't justified by the duchy at all, and so Anheria apprehended and arrested him. From here, Ringabel separates himself from the party after being told to see Sage Georgiana regarding his memories. It's there he finds out about the angel that interrupted the Sage and De Rosa's battle, who told them of the harrowing, which he relays to Ringabel and Ultinus as well, who came to see the Sage regarding an issue with the Earth Crystal losing its power. As Ringabel and Ultinus go off to save Adia and warn her of everything the Sage did, she, Agnes, and Tiz encounter Brave at Eisenbridge, who's demanding access to the Crystal of Fire so the Duchy can control it. Ringabel and Ultinus interrupt this battle and reveal Eri as the evil being aiming to drive the crystals out of control and destroy the world. Eri reveals that the Earth Crystal lost its power because it resonated with itself? Somehow? That doesn't make any sense, but okay, I guess. Whatever, let's go with it. She summons a bunch of monsters that Brave and everyone else there deal with while the party rushes off to deal with Eri. While all that is happening though, Olivia is arriving in Eisenberg, also searching for a way to the Temple of Fire to awaken the Fire Crystal. Why she didn't just leave this to Agnes and stay in Florem, I have no idea. Eri catches up with Olivia after having fled the scene before, and helps to awaken the Fire Crystal. While the party does arrive to try and interrupt this, it's too late and the Fire Crystal is awakened. Eri unleashes her larval form and weakens them, leaving them in the collapsing world as she leaves to go to the next one. Something stops her though, presumably the player, or reader in this case I suppose, and blocks out their view so she can continue her plan. And that's where it ends. A nice little story of another version of Luxendarc that Eri visited in her long journey. Enough differs in the game where it's an interesting read even if you already know the story, the art is fantastic and the writing is great. Not much to complain about really. Can't say I would recommend it to someone who hasn't played the game, unfortunately, since it kind of spoils one of the biggest plot points, but if you have absolutely no interest in playing Bravely Default, I suppose the story would be great, though of course it purposely leaves on a sort of cliffhanger to encourage people to play the game instead of just reading the manga. If you want to read it for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description to where it can be read online in English, which is also where I got all these images from. Typically, demos aren't really worth talking about when it comes to games, but I feel Bravely Default is a bit different. Currently, the demo available for download on Japanese systems is very interesting. It gives you about half of the game, the first 4 chapters, entirely free, which is insane. The only thing you're missing out on in this case is voice acting, which is unfortunate, but when you're getting a 30 to 40 hour experience entirely free, it's difficult to complain. Voice acting, as well as the rest of the game, can be added in for just about $20, or 2,000 yen. Before this demo though, and before the game's release in Japan, 5 other demos were released leading up to the full game, each highlighting a different aspect of it, as well as an AR movie for each of the main cast upon its completion. Ultimately, all of these demos were compiled into one large demo, with its own unique side story, serving as an introduction to the game's story, world, and mechanics. And this demo is what was translated and brought into the West, and what is currently available at the time of this recording on non-Japanese systems. And so this is going to be the primary focus. Oh, and if you're wondering about those AR cutscenes, we'll be bringing those back up later, as they are still accessible in the West, even without those specific demos. The Bravely Default demo, though, as I said, has its own original side story, but don't expect that story to be anything special at all. Essentially, sometime after the awakening of the Wind Crystal, the parties call back to Ansheim because there's a bunch of trouble in the area, and the people think that the Vestal can solve it. Around the city, you'll find side quests that first make the party simply head out to get some materials such as beast livers, and eventually you'll have to take on bosses like a Melusine, a Minotaur, or the Dragon. Quick note about the 3 areas of Harina Ruins, Miasma Woods, and the Temple of Wind. They have modified designs for the demos that are actually seen in the main game in its bonus dungeon, Dimensions Hasp. The party does have a number of jobs available for them to tackle these quests, but there are some limitations. First off, the max level for party members is 20, and the max level for all the jobs is 4. The job lineup is okay, if a little uninteresting. It's cool to see Performer and Ninja though. In terms of the demo's overall gameplay, it's okay, a decent introduction to Bravely Default's mechanics at least, but the bosses are kinda terrible. They go on for way too long, and while that is a slight complaint I have with the full game of Bravely Default, it is way worse here, so please don't let that problem in the demo turn you away from the full game. I'm not going to bother going over all the quests and fights, because the game kind of guides you through these quests, telling you exactly where to go, and often exactly what party setup you might want to go with for upcoming bosses. Overall, a decent introduction to Bravely Default's mechanics, but not an amazing one, and definitely not a great introduction to the game's story and characters. Honestly, as boring as it would be to mention, just having the game's prologue as a demo may have been a better choice than this, and having that save data transfer over to the full game when you purchase it. The demo can be worth playing though, despite the problems I have with it, thanks to Narende reconstruction and demo bonuses. Beginning with the former, it essentially works the same way as in the full game where you get villagers through Street Pass, but there's much less to restore and the max restoration level is 3. There's also this guy in Ansheim who, when you talk to him, will give you a villager for free, and this can actually be exploited to get as many villagers in the demo as you want. Simply talk to him, then go to the adventure, do not save, but simply go back to the title screen. Load into your save, talk to the guy again, get another villager, and repeat to your heart's content. The best part, 20 of these villagers can be transferred over to the full game, giving you a bit of a head start in terms of the reconstruction. Keep in mind, it is only 20 villagers, so even if you get 100 villagers in the demo, only 20 of them will be sent to the full game. As for demo bonuses, there are sets of items you get for accomplishing certain things in the demo, and these items can be transferred over to the full game when you're starting a new file, providing a bit of help at the beginning of your journey. For simply playing the demo at all, you get 2 antidotes, 2 eye drops, and 2 echo herbs. For fully restoring Narende, you get a bronze bangle and 2 phoenix downs. For defeating the Melusine, 3 potions and a high potion. The reward for being the Animantite Shell is a rod and an ether. Defeating the Minotaur earns you a staff and an ether. For defeating the Dragon, you get a bronze helm and leather armor. And lastly, for defeating the Automaton, you earn a broadsword and a buckler. Pretty good bonuses. Basically they serve to save you some money at the beginning of Bravely Default, as you won't really have to buy all these items, and while I personally prefer not to use them, they are a cool bonus and make it more worth playing the demo than it might otherwise be. Honestly though, the best bonus you get is the 20 villagers. If you bought the physical version of Bravely Default, you got an AR card on the back of this flimsy manual that could be scanned to access the intro cutscene where Anius falls to the floor, and this cutscene can also be viewed if you have the digital version by just hitting start. You can also find this card on the Bravely Default website, alongside 5 others that feature the main cast that give short cutscenes for them. These cutscenes are the same ones I mentioned when talking about the Japanese demos, the ones you see at the end of each one. But of course, it doesn't stop there, because there's also the set of 34 AR cards that came with the collector's edition of the game. 6 of them are the ones we already talked about, but the other 28 are all unique cards available only through this pack. Or I mean, you can find them online, and even in this video, you can just scan them right from this video and they'll work fine. All of these ones just make their model appear on screen, and you can have them do little animations and say some lines, nothing big. If you want to see all the AR cards and what they can do exactly, I'll have a video showing them all off, linked in the description, or with the card on screen right now. But extra merch doesn't stop there. Music is a big part of Bravely Default. It has an absolutely incredible soundtrack after all, but dear god, it doesn't even come close to stopping at the game's end. There are a ton of extra soundtrack CDs related to Bravely Default. Just Look at this list on VGMDB. It's insane. Luckily, if you sift through it all, only 5 of them are really worth anything. Not price-wise, because they're actually fairly cheap, surprisingly and thankfully for me, but in that they have unique songs on them, and this is kind of confusing, so hold tight. First off, Luxendarc Shoukikou / Linked Horizon, and its limited edition. The former features the composer for Bravely Default, Revo, standing in front of the castle and the moon. The limited edition has a similar cover with Revo in a different pose, but comes in this leathery style case, and has 2 CDs, one with the music and another with a music video for the vocalized version of that person's name is. There's another variant of the limited edition of this that features the main cast of the game on the cover. Make sure you do not get this one. This only features 3 songs, all of which are on the other 2 versions. These 2 CDs largely have the same songs, save for one difference. The non-limited edition has an extended version of Visitor, whereas the limited edition replaces this with an extended Fighting to the End. And of course, you also get that music video. So, recap there. Get Luxendarc Shoukikou / Linked Horizon and its limited edition, but not the limited edition that has the main cast of Bravely Default on its cover. The next one you'll want to get isn't quite as confusing, thankfully. It's Luxendarc Daikikou / Linked Horizon Limited Edition. That's the one with the brown cover where Revo is holding a guitar. There's also one with a purple cover, but make sure not to get this one because you'll be missing out on one song, an 8-bit medley of songs from Bravely Default. Otherwise, these 2 are the same. There's also some drama CDs that released, but they're all in Japanese, so even if I did get them, I wouldn't be able to tell you what was going on, so they exist, pick them up if you're really interested, and that's about all I've got for you there. There's also this Christmas CD that was released. I don't know why this exists, but it does. I don't know if Christmas music sounds sort of different in Japan, but this isn't what I'd consider Christmas music. Maybe I'm just a dumb American and have my own idea of it, but I mean, some of the songs are really cool and good, but well, I can't say a lot of them are really that Christmassy, but still really cool and interesting part of Bravely history. Lastly, there's a DVD or Blu-ray you can buy of a Bravely Default concert that was held, but this doesn't provide any new songs to listen to, just proof they had a ton of fun when making the soundtrack. It's really cool. I won't be showing too much of it for copyright reasons, nor will I be playing too much of the music on these for the same reason, but I will play some samples of my favorite songs from each of these albums, as well as showing the full track list for those albums if you're interested. Mind you, I'm not playing every single song on the albums. That would take quite a while. Only samples of my favorites. Of course, timecodes will be in the description for each song, as well as links to buy these specific albums on Amazon, which is where I got them, so I would assume that's most convenient. I'm sure you can also find them on like Play Asia or eBay or something, but I got them on Amazon, so. In terms of where to buy the AR cards, they're pretty available on eBay, but prices can vary, so unfortunately you're kind of on your own for finding a good deal on those. Anyway, enjoy the music, and thank you so much for not only watching this video, but joining me on this journey that has been Bravely Default.
命は重いのかいそれとも軽いのかい空ぼのポケットには何を詰めるべきかまあ君が寝てる間にも戦いは始まってゆく知らないままで気づかぬふりはなんだか悲しい風のように自由さどこまでも訪ねてゆけるが地形新しい世界へ羽ばたくように歌を奏でよう奪えない自由はいつだってここにある耳を澄まして
自分の殻を一人では破ることもできずわっと探してた受け売りじゃなくて傷ついても信じられるものをここを渡って見渡したい風が舞う大空は自由に震えただとは誰が正しいものなのかこの目で見極めたいのよ大切な何かを守れなかったような気がしていた大切な誰かを救えなかったような気がしていたこの胸の炎が真実の愛なのか食材に近いものなのか惑う俺の横を走り抜けてゆく少年に風を感じた未来が記された不思議な俺の手帳を洗う彼と彼女がやはりそうなのか時のダメージ過剰マジやばい 「